Welcome to the channel Tribe. In this Instagram live session, we have Rahul Parwal discussing on how to add massive value and test beyond requirements.
Hi everyone, welcome to this IG live with Rahul Parwal. So in today's session, we will be talking about a very important part of your whole testing process, and that is requirements. So basically the topic for today is how to add massive value and test beyond requirements, and we will be having Rahul Parwal who will be joining us. So hopefully you will get your questions answered on how to see the requirements, how to focus on it, and how to test according to it. So I think it's time to call Rahul on stage. Now before calling Rahul on stage, I would like to give a huge shout out to BrowserStack, our premium sponsor for conferences and our annual sponsor for all our small events. Because of them, we are able to do all these events, able to help all of you grow and upskill yourself. So now with that, I would love to call Rahul on stage.
Hi, Rahul.
Hi, Vanshika. How are you?
I am doing fine. How are you?
Awesome. A vacation after a long time and start of a new month. So overall positive, filled with energy.
That's great. So while we move into the topic very soon, and you have been to this IG Live once before also, right? But
Yes.
there are still few people that are new to this session, so we would love to, first go through introductions and get to know a little bit about you. And that will be where we'll start. So, Rahul, over to you. You can tell us a little bit about your journey as a tester and why you chose this topic for today.
Okay. So thank you, Vanshika. Thanks to the Test Tribe for inviting me for the second time. Now, who I am also a software tester, like a lot of folks who have joined us and who would be listening to this. I am a tester like you. My journey was also very much similar to like you. I tried to learn a lot of skills, followed with so many trends that are going on, from automation to the exploratory testing and so on, different tools. And eventually I have come to a realization that this is a pretty amazing field. This is one of the most creative field, and I started falling into love with this field. And that's when I started to share my learnings through my blogs, through talks, through such interactions with you, with Test Tribe, and so on. So that's about me. I work with IFM engineering. So IFM works in the field of industrial automation. I'm a senior software engineer there, and I work on IoT testing for IoT related solutions in the middleware layer. So that's what I do. And why I chose this topic of exploring requirements is I feel this is one of the most fundamental topic, yet most people don't talk about it, and a lot of things go bad in testing, go wrong with the things that we do because somehow we are not focusing on the requirement, on the social requirements as well as the technical requirements. So I mean, when I talk requirements, I want to talk about it in a very holistic way rather than just the technical requirement document. So I think that's something I look forward to, and I see a lot of folks joining in. So feel free to drop your questions, any problems that you have faced with requirements, or as a tester you are not invited to a meeting where requirements were discussed or anything. I mean, ask me, and maybe we will have an organic discussion. So yeah, I'll try my best to share my experience.
Great to know more about you, Rahul. And while you're talking about this topic, from my understanding also, before starting to test, you need to understand the requirements and the scope of the project and everything. So it's very important topic that we have taken today. And if anyone has any questions regarding it, feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A tab, and we will take it at the end. So while we are starting to talk about requirements, the first fundamental question that comes to mind is, what is the role of requirement in software testing? Like, why is it used? Who gives these requirements and everything?
Okay. So when I was reading about this concept of like how one started thinking about requirements and how this thing entire came into the software development, the fundamental thing to understand is that any thing that we start to develop, it starts from a point that any solution to this problem exists. And now we need to find a way to solve that. Now, a requirement is just a condition, it's a quality criteria that matters to somebody who matters. So, whenever you want to create something, so any product essentially is created to deliver value, and any condition that helps us to deliver that value, that's called a requirement. Now, are all requirements written down? No. Some of them, yes, and the ones that are written down are understanding of somebody's understanding of the actual requirement. And then there are multiple sources of requirements. The people talking about it, the customers who want the product. Now, there are then technical requirements from the developers, from the technology standpoint, from the architects. So, requirements come from a lot of places, from a lot of sources. And it's not just that it has come and you have to wait till a point that it will come. It will keep on coming. It will keep on evolving. There will be new additions. Today, when we talk about world, a lot of companies today focus on agile, iterative development models. So, requirements keep on updating. They keep on upgrading and so on. So, that's the fundamental part. So no matter what model you apply, what the software development methodology you want to apply, requirements is something that you would have to consider if you want to deliver quality.
Understood. That is a quite brief and perfect, I think, definition, or you can say understanding about requirements. So now the next thing that comes to my mind is that while, as you said, that requirements can come from like different places, and it can come at any stage of your testing or any stage of your development. How do you think exploring requirements beforehand, going through all places and exploring requirements can help in achieving a better product or test design?
Okay. So essentially, how does exploring requirement help a tester do a good design? So fundamental thing to understand is that development is often done on stated requirements. So a developer will see a requirement or they will interpret a requirement, and based on their interpretation, they are going to develop something. Now, the interpretations are always half-baked. There are sources of ambiguities in interpretation. How you see a specific thing, it's not always sure that I will also see that in the same thought process. And at the same time, it's even if we both agree, maybe the third person would see it in a different form. So there will be gaps. Now, development is done on these gaps, and there will be gaps in the development, and that's where testing comes into the play. Now, if you do your testing just on those written requirements which were given to you, or just on the product, and don't consider the other outside factor, don't do any active investigation or don't do exploration, which we were talking about, then your testing would also be very much restricted. It would probably be restricted to the thought process of the developer or the thought process of the product owner who wrote those requirements. But if you really want to do professional work, and professionals care about quality, professionals care about active exploration, they don't restrict themselves to the information that they give. If you talk about any professional investigator or a lawyer, they would actively hunt for information. Similarly, professional doctors, they would ask you questions to explore your problem well. Because a lot of times it's highly likely that you as a patient might not be able to explain and express everything. You might be going through some things, you know certain aspects, But then exploration becomes very critical. And once you have explored that what is the actual problem, and now this exploration part is not very simple that you do 2 or 3 things and you do that. There are multiple ways. It's a very vast topic. We recently did a workshop on it, and that workshop itself of a 2-hour workshop was just maybe 10% of what all you could possibly do to get better at requirements. But the mindset to understand and to focus on is that you have to focus on people who matter. You have to focus on the different sources from which these things can happen. You have to focus on collaboration. You have to focus on reviews, sharing your understanding, using right brain tools, for example, modeling, mind mapping, and a lot of things. And once you have a better understanding of the thing that actually we want to do, now that you can use as a reference to design your test better. Because suppose I don't know all the rules of the game, I would not be able to play it very well. So you have to go and find out each and every intricacies of the game, the minor details, what matters, what does not matter. And once you understand that, then test design becomes very good. Then you are capturing, or then you are targeting your test to help a stakeholder, help preserve a value that matters to the stakeholder. So that's how I see these two things directly proportional. So unless you understand the requirements well, you cannot test them very well. So yeah, that's my take on that.
Understood. So while you were talking about, how it can make the product better, you also said that it is not just about one document, but there are like multiple things that you have to see, multiple areas that you have to go through, and multiple people that you have to think according to, right? So what are some common challenges that you face while you are exploring the requirements or exploring the scope?
Okay. I'll start from the challenges that I used to face from the start till the challenges I see till date. First thing, testers not involved in the discussions on the requirement. Second, testers are involved but in a passive way. They are not actively involved. Or whenever they ask a question, they would be probably be asked to note that down, but ask it at a later stage. But because right now we don't want to discuss more questions or such kind of things. Third thing is not having access to the real requirements. So maybe sometimes the testers only have access to the technical requirements, but not the product requirements. That how would this product deliver a value to the customer? So that's a challenge. Next is not getting invited to key meetings or not being even aware about certain meetings or certain changes. So it's on the lines of a change has been done, it has been implemented, and then tester gets to know that this has happened. And now they have to deal with all the risks that have eventually been overlooked and a lot of things. Then sometimes the requirements are written in a very ambiguous format. So, for example, somebody says we want this faster than that, but what does faster mean? And how much faster? And what are the trade-offs that can happen? So, such kind of things. Then another thing that I see is that sometimes testers don't talk directly with the support or marketing team. There is a loop, the entire loop is missing. So, which creates a barrier that tester would probably not be knowing what are the actual custom problems that the customer is facing in production. Somebody from the support team is solving issues for the customer, but then if the tester is not aware about those requirements, then always those things are going to be left out in the subsequent release also. So I think that collaboration, communication, that medium should be there. So yeah, these are some basic things, but of course there can be more. And if somebody in the audience they want to add, please add. Thank you. Yeah.
So while you were talking about these common challenges, a lot of them seem like a communication gap or, something like that only. So while it is dependent on some other person or some other department, how do you think you can overcome this and still be actively part of that the whole requirement or exploration part?
Okay. See, one thing is that customer education is very important. Now, when I say talk about customer, I am talking from the perspective that the product owner or the team who is managing, they are also your internal customers of your testing. I'm not talking about the end customer. So educating your customer is very important, because unless they know the importance of the value that you can add, unless you show them, then they would probably, not even have an idea that why we should add a tester right at the start. You would have to also show that what are the cost of missing assumptions. That there are some assumptions and like how that would cost exponentially in the long run. Third thing is you would have to get yourself invited to key meetings and make change or show change, 10% at a time. So now this is where the other soft skills of a tester becomes very useful. For example, persuasion, communication, written communication, modeling, and I'm talking about product modeling. And if you can do that, it becomes very easy to showcase and deliver your value. Now, I want to share a personal experience, so masking all the details out, but I had been in projects where testers were not involved in such discussions. Till today, when the team wants testers to be involved in the initial kickoff meetings, the discussions, and even the planning, and they want to hear the testers' opinion on that, because they know that this matters. And so it's also a part of how you persuade the team, and help them understand these core concepts, because a lot of time, people might just be optimizing that, okay, let's leave testing out right now and we will save time, but this is a double-edged sword, and then you have to educate people about this. So it's a lot of education.
Understood. Got it. So I think a lot of it also comes to the part where if you actively want to be involved in something and you ask for it, there's a high chance that people will give it to you. So a lot of times we just get into that hole that, okay, this is the document that we have given, we have to do it according to this, and we don't actively participate. So probably if you ask more questions, you will get those answers and be better at your testing.
And don't bombard people with questions. That's a tip. So when I learned about context-free questions and such questioning tools, I used to ask a lot of them. But sometimes it's also important to understand that maybe the customer also don't know all the answers at this moment.
Yeah.
So use a 10% rule. And 10% is a very safety net rule that I use, which is I only ask them stuff 10% at a time. So I don't overwhelm them with all of my questions at that moment itself, which gives them even a safe space. And now this is the social process of testing, right? Because if you ask them too many questions, testing becomes hard, because then they say, man, this guy is asking us questions, we don't know the answer, let's leave him out of this process. So sometimes you have to understand their challenges also. So it's a very social process.
Got understood. So what I've understood till now is that to get the requirements properly, to understand the requirements of a project properly, you need to talk to a lot of people, and obviously you need to get information from a lot of people, because a lot of people are involved in that product, right? But then how do you ensure that all these requirements that you're getting, or the understanding that you're getting, they are complete and accurate?
Good question. Now, this is where the art of projection becomes very important. The ability to project your understanding is very important. So how I do it, I'll explain you. I create mind maps of the entire product. I do a survey testing. I map out all the product. I map out all the structure, function, interfaces, platform, operations, data, timing related stuff associated with the project. I showcase them back. I asked them, for example, I asked them questions about quality criteria. What are the quality criteria that matter? And then I list down certain things, checklists, and I tell them that this is what I think matters for us. Can you review that? Then demo meeting, review meetings, making a model, generating test out of it, and sharing it with them, getting their feedback on that. Next is project reviews. So overall review meetings where you share your understanding, important. Next is drawing out stuff. So one thing that I have learned from James Bach is that if you can visually draw out things from your understanding, then sometimes it becomes very easy for the customer to understand that what's going on. So I mean, visual intelligence, drawing the thing visually and showcasing to somebody, explaining to somebody. It's kind of a debriefing. And if you debrief, they will tell you these are the missing gaps. And these are just the ways to reduce the odds of success. But I mean, there is no short way that I can give you that Vanshika, do this and you will be 100% successful. So it's a balance of things. Yeah.
Understood. We have a question from the audience. It's from Aditya. What should we do if we found many bugs in an implementation? Either we should directly tell the developer about these or inform it in daily scrums to get the exposure.
Okay, good question. Very good question. I'm also doing a course with the tribe on this bug advocacy part where I cover this in depth. So it's on the lines of overwhelm developers with lot of bugs or not. See, two things. First, suppose you find that there is a build issue which is causing a lot of bugs. Then it's not useful to list down each and every bug, but it's instead helpful that you go and talk to the developer that this is a build issue which is causing 10 issues. So if you have to identify the root cause and tell them. Second thing is, suppose it's not a build issue, these are valid issues. Then you have to classify the issues. So there are UI issues, there are functionality, UX, usability, and XYZ all. What I do is I try to club issues. I try to do investigation and I try to club similar issues together so that the developer doesn't have to waste a lot of time in looking into 100 bug reports versus maybe we could simplify it in 20 bug reports and make it easier for them to understand. And then sometimes if the build is totally very bad, it's a very bad quality, what you can do is you can invite them to a meeting, you can list down your exploratory testing findings. Now this is where note taking and all that comes into picture, because then you have to showcase it to them and tell them that these are basic issues going on and there is always a trade-off. Me investing this much time to find all the basic issues versus you doing one round of testing for yourself, because there are trade-offs. So if they say no, we cannot do it, then you have to highlight the risks of this trade-off, that if you do this, this is the amount of time you are going to take to find all these basic issues, to report all these basic issues, and then to retest this. So you have to highlight trade-offs, and it's kind of a balance. It's a very contextual answer. I mean, suppose it's a build error, talk to them. Some kind of issues you even talk to people in in stand-ups or mention them in passing. Sometimes certain issues are important but not important for this release. So in that case, you have to ask what are the quality criteria that we have to focus in this release. Suppose out of 50, 40 bugs are not important for this release. So what you have to do, you have to focus on the 10 and the rest remaining 40 maybe assign, put them in the system later on, assign them to next release. So yeah, that's how I see this answer. But good question, very good question.
Understood. That makes a lot of sense also. We are at our last question for today from our side. So would love for the people listening to us to ask their questions if they have any questions in the topics that have been covered till now, or if they have any other questions, do drop them in the chat and we will take this after this one last question.
Yep.
So my next question is that I understood how can exploring requirements help in better products. And while you were answering one question, you also said that we can't be 100% sure, right, of if the requirements that we have understood are correct or not.
Are fully correct.
So how can exploring requirements help in managing the project risks?
Good. See, risk is the probability of something bad happening. Now, in any project, even the core purpose of testing is to help your stakeholders know about risks so that they can take a well informed decision. Now, the later they know about risks, it's more problematic. For example, I'll give you an example. Suppose when you come to me, suppose I'm a doctor, you have a problem, you come to me, and I give you a medicine, but I don't tell you about its risks. And later on, when you have side effects, you have complications, then I say, okay, there was a risk that I was aware of, but then we didn't discuss it at the initial stage, but let me hot fix it. Now, you would say this is totally unprofessional. Because if there is a risk, it's better we identify it at the earliest. And early stage risks can be found in the requirement itself. If you see ambiguity in certain part of requirement, it's a risk. If you see a requirement is too complex or the specifics are not mentioned, it's a risk. If you notice that there is a very high precision requirement, it's again a risk. If you notice a requirement change in an area where a lot of people are used to a specific feature of a product and you want to change it, it's a direct risk. So there are ways to identify risks from requirement and highlight them. And all you do, how you do that is by exploring requirements, and that makes it very easy. I'm writing a blog post on this where I'll be covering. So that would be coming out next week. You can follow me or follow the test tribe, and where we'll talk about all these ways. So yeah, that's a good question. Thank you.
Got it. Understood. If you have any questions, go to the Test Tribe Discord. Rahul is there. He keeps answering questions of people. So just ask him there and he will definitely answer you.
Absolutely. Thank you to everybody who joined in, and a lot of familiar people, a lot of new people, and it's good to know a lot of new people. And even after this IG live, if you have questions, ask me on the Test Tribe Discord or on LinkedIn, social media, whatever you feel comfortable, maybe Instagram also, and we'll have a discussion. So thank you for joining in.
So I think we can end this there. Thank you so much, Rahul, for joining in. Every time I talk to you, it's always, better understanding about things. And even though exactly I'm not from the domain, you make it so simple that I get the whole point of what you're saying. So thank you so much for that simplified version of everything. And we would love to see you again in some other IG Live with some other topic. So stay tuned and we will keep coming up with interesting topics. Till then, bye. Have a nice weekend.
Have a nice weekend, everyone.